ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, we're the heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. We are blessed today. This is a big show here. This is a once a year Christmas Day special with Ron Marmolevsky at Ron A Sports. We've been doing shows now for 3 years, and we start in the regular season. We get to the Super Bowl. We talk college, we talk NFL. I come on with Ron for some wrap-ups for the end of the year, and then we're back here now for the NFL draft on Thursday. And then Ron gets to go on vacation. He gets to play tennis. He gets to do a lot of good things. And then next thing you know, he's back in the war room in the summer, getting us ready for hopefully season number 4. With Ron. So go follow Ron, of course, on X or Twitter at Ron A Sports. You can catch a lot of his written work at Wager Talk as well. Spot guest appearances on Sports Grid. Who knows? I think he should be on the NFL Network, to be honest with you, but maybe we can get him on there at some point. So first and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Viva Tequila Seltzer, 6 flavors in all. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. AtlantaSteaksandSeafood.com. Introduce yourself on Facebook to Terry Smith. Then head on back to AtlantaSteaksandSeafood.com. Steaks, chops, seafood, appetizers, wines. Set it and forget it. He's got 4 subscription plans. Check one of the boxes every 30 days. Terry will drop off a box or 2 of protein to get you through the month. The only thing you'll need is a spare propane tank. So without further ado, the true star of this show, trust me on this, Mr. Ron Marmolevsky.
Well, I don't know where to begin. There's so much going on. It's like overload. If you should see my desk, there are papers everywhere. There's this, there's that. Busy week coming. Jack Bauer from the television show In the Past 24, when he stayed up 24 hours in a row. I think he's second fiddle now to me for this week.
We talked a little backstage, and again, we try to keep you away from the overtime. I know the wife's out. We could talk for hours. We could be the lead-in for ESPN, for Fox, for whatever we need here. There's so many ways to go here, and you did say something special backstage. It's like the Masters. The Masters doesn't officially begin till the back 9 on Sunday. The NFL draft, that's all anyone wants to talk about is the first round. Who's going first? Who's trading for this? They're all fugazi. Of course, every team wants this star, that star. But the true draft really begins on Friday and Saturday, correct?
First pick of the second day, first pick of the third day, that fourth round, it's just so unbelievably important. It's trade capital. If you want to, somebody forgot somebody they want to get up, it's your own draft room where you get a chance for 10, 15, 20 hours to actually see, wait a second, we should have gotten this guy or we should have got that guy. And the other thing is we're so concentrated on the first round, but these teams, if they're going to succeed in the short run and in the long run, day 2 and 3 makes the draft. It's easy to make a home run hit or a double hit with the first 10 or 12, 15 picks because everybody's good at that. Everybody's knows everybody at that point. But for example, everybody knows Denver needs a running back. But Denver doesn't have to take a running back at pick 20. They might have a game plan that other people can't see where they're going to go ahead and say, wait a second, there's 20 good running backs in this draft. We have our eye. We have 3 or 4 that are rated about the same. We're not going to take a running back at pick 20. We're going to surprise you. Seattle last year, everybody had them taking an offensive lineman. They go and get value with Murphy, defensive lineman, in the first round. Then they double up in the second round on offensive linemen. These are the things going on with the GMs and their own draft brass, what they're talking about. It's not just about round 1.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I remember this last year during this show. You were saying the one must is the Atlanta Falcons taking an edge rusher. They haven't had one in decades, and they were gifted with 2 edge rushers right there, and they turned the card in, and it was Michael Penix Jr.
And it may work out for them because they found out that Cousins is a little bit older, and he had 160 million attached to him. Now they did pay him a whole bunch of money, but maybe Penix is the answer. I think he's going to have an erratic career, by the way.
I agree. And you talk about the second round. You talk about the draft capital. And here the Bills made a colossal blunder by trading their pick to Kansas City. They get Worthy. And then the Patriots tried to come back in to get that next wide receiver, Leggett, and they traded to Carolina. We can't trade with you, Patriots. You're in our division. But, of course, the Chiefs are the team that they're trying to beat. But in second round, the Patriots sitting there, needing desperately a wide receiver, they trade back and they end up with Polk and Baker that had 2 horrific first years, and they passed on Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the problem. There's person-team fit. So you knew Ladd McConkey may not have had the kind of year he would have had, but he went to the right team. Just like Bonaire, a lot of people go to the right team. McConkey with Harbaugh is a tremendous fit. New England got passive in the draft, and here we go. They got 4 of the first 77 picks this year, and I have a very set criteria of what they need to do in those 4 picks because I've researched these teams from what they need to do at the beginning to what they need to do at the end, and I'll base next season preview and what I think they can accomplish based on what they did, not in round 1, but through the entire draft. Polk and Baker, they're possibly going to be good players, but they have ceilings we knew of wide receiver 2. Nobody was projecting either one of those guys as a wide receiver 1. And I just don't understand why they traded back in the draft instead of just staying and playing.
Well, and lastly, before we move on to the draft, I wouldn't be doing myself justice because I talked to you and I'm texting you during the draft like, hello, and I'm talking about Cooper DeJean, and of course the Super Bowl star of other than the rest of the team. He had an amazing Super Bowl, and he just kept dropping and dropping. And I'm saying to you, even for the Patriots, you got Gonzalez on one side, DeJean here. Why is he dropping here?
Yeah, he had a first-round grade on my board. It's nice when you hit some of those. I don't understand why he lasted as long as he did. Obviously, organizations like Baltimore, they're famous for you got somebody dropping, and even if it's not an extreme need, you're going to take them. Well, in Philadelphia, it was a big need to get back-to-back defensive backs, and they got the number 1 guy, and they got maybe the number 4 or 5 or 3 guy and, 2 first rounders like that. A lot of teams should be kicking themselves for, I don't know why they would pass on a guy who's fundamentally sound, assignment sound because of where he got his training at University of Iowa. He just made plays and he proved it in the Super Bowl.
All right, we're going to have some fun here. I know everyone wants to know about the first round, and I think right now the first 6 are going to be chalk. Now, with that said, it's all it takes is one trade. I know today and yesterday the Bears calling up to the Patriots because the Bears are tied to Genty all of a sudden, and the Bears in the offseason have really worked on that offensive line. So why not give Caleb another weapon to add to the arsenal? But we're going to start on top here. Okay. This is, and I don't use the word lock here. I never do. The only locks are on your front and back doors. I don't use them in our business. But if there's a lock in the draft, obviously the first pick, Tennessee, Cam Ward, give us the whys and then potentially what happens if they didn't, but we know they're going to take it. If you were the GM, Ron.
If I were the GM, the only way I'd not take Ward, because he's really the only realistic, quote unquote, safe pick at quarterback in this draft, is if the farm, if it was like, what was it, Mike Ditka, who traded his whole draft at one point, that's what it would take to get him. You give me the next 3 first-round picks, give me 2 or 3 ready-to-go players, and give me a couple of picks in this draft. And yeah, then I could sell myself short for another year and build my roster up the way Jimmy Johnson built his roster up, the way a lot of teams have been able to build their roster up because they're not quite ready right now. Is Cam Ward a sure thing? Not necessarily, but he makes the throws downfield pretty easy. He's going to throw some interceptions, but a lot of great quarterbacks have thrown interceptions and thrived in the NFL. Obviously, Brett Favre comes to mind and others like that. So he has a skill set to thrive in the NFL. Now the question is, what can they build around him?
We dropped down to 2 in Cleveland. Now the consensus is, of course, they're tied to Deshaun Watson. The hardest part of the billionaire club, Ron, is to admit when you made a mistake, rip the Band-Aid off and move on. So there's Shedeur Sanders. They have Myles Garrett. Here's Abdul Carter. What about 2 bookends that would be? And then there's the unicorn, Travis Hunter, who wants to play offense, but also wants to play defense. Consensus is it's Travis Hunter. But again, give us your thoughts on Travis Hunter and give us your thoughts if, Ron, you were the GM for Cleveland.
I'm okay with either one because you get something different with either one, but I'm certainly okay with either one. With Carter, you get somebody who's probably going to be in the league 10 years wrecking opposing quarterbacks. Obviously, there's a slight health concern, but the things that he do are going to remind people of the Myles Garrett and the Micah Parsons of the world. And those people, you have to scheme against them. You have to design a play, a game plan against them. So why not have somebody like that? And with Travis Hunter, it just seems the game comes so easy to him. He knows what you're going to do offensively before you know what you're going to do, offensively. He's in the right place. His hands, he plucks that ball away from his body. It's like he has glue on his hands. He could do all those different things. He can provide an extra weapon offensively and defensively. I do believe he could be on the field, if it were me, 100% of the time on defense, 50% of the time on offense. I think he has to get a little bigger in his frame. He's going to get beat up a little. The NFL has a lot of big guys, but I'm not going to split hairs. Either one would be an asset at 2 and 3.
So now we get to the Giants. I say Daboll, dead man walking. They bring in 2 quarterbacks, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson. They drafted Malik Nabers last year. They already have some edge rushers. They have some decent pieces on defense. And now we're sitting here, we're assuming Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders, they're on the phone right now saying, hey, anyone need Sanders? Anyone want them? But it sounds like when the card comes in, it's Abdul Carter, correct?
It reminds me of Marvin Harrison Jr. last year at Arizona. I heard all those rumors. Everybody, you have to parse everything out. There was not one chance in a million, in my opinion, that Marvin Harrison was not going to Arizona. You've got to detect patterns. You've got to look at what the GM's doing. You've got to look at what positions they've looked at and not looked at. There's so much behind the scene work that I think is so important to do at this time. And in my opinion, how could you let a Carter or a Hunter slide by? Because there's a big drop after that. And as far as quarterback is concerned, I know it's a rookie contract, and I know it's easier to absorb salaries now if you don't make the Deshaun Watson mistake. So they certainly could go out and get back into the first round and draft a Dardo or Sanders if they fall, or try Milrow or try somebody else. They got to get together. Like you said, their seats are hot. Actually, the GM has done a really good job in a way of piecing together the draft over the last 5 or 6 years. The problem is they don't have an offensive line. And until you improve that offensive line, you're going to get your quarterback killed.
And they're in a division where we saw a team come from the bottom, the Washington Commanders, who had an amazing offseason. Looks like they got a stud quarterback for years to come. A GM that's not afraid to spend some money to move in some parts. They built up the offensive line here. You got Jaden Daniels. You got weapons on both sides of the ball. Now you're looking for Dallas maybe to bounce back after a tough year. And, of course, you got the Super Bowl champs in that division.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Howie Roseman of Philly, he's not going to stand pat. He's got picks only through rounds 1 through 5, but he has extra picks in some of these rounds. So he's going to wheel and deal. He's going to get the players that he wants to fit. So we're not worried about them. We worry about Dallas because everybody they tend to meet with is a first or second rounder. They do not do enough homework, in my opinion, on day 3 of the draft. And if they want to get better, because injuries happen in the NFL, you and I know that. San Francisco knows that. Detroit knows that. It happens every year for a lot of these teams, and they can pop up. Well, if your second string isn't good enough and you haven't really vetted out these players, you're going to wind out like a Jacksonville or an Atlanta. You're going to draft 5 or 6 players a year, and you're going to go 7 and 10 a lot. So you have to, and Dallas doesn't want to be stuck in this rut where now they don't even get to the playoffs. They've got some talent at the top, but I'm worried about the back end of their draft. And Washington, because they've drafted to the culture and because they've spread picks around to a number of different needy positions, they look like they're here to stay. So I'm curious to see how they blend that culture with the talent in this draft.
Well, at pick 4, the New England Patriots right behind me. The draft starts here. We have talked for months now. Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, Membo. Consensus is they're going to play it safe here unless New Orleans wants to move up from 9 to 4 and draft Sanders, unless the Bears want to move up from 10 to 4 and draft Gentry. Consensus is they're going to play it safe here and take Will Campbell. Thoughts with that?
They're in a tough position because after picks 1, 2, and 3, you're going to start to see whoever gets picked at 4 not have that much of a talent difference than whoever gets picked at 24. It's just one of those places you don't want to be first in line for everybody who's about the same. They have 4 of the first 77 picks. I want an edge rusher, a defensive back, a running back, because Stevenson fumbled 7 times last year and he slowed down. And I want an offensive lineman, particularly a left tackle. The order for me doesn't matter as much, but those are the 4 positions. If they can get Detroit style of a few years ago, if they can get 4 starters at those positions, and you can get a running back at 69 and 77, you have to get your O-line and edge rusher probably a little earlier, and then that defensive back after that. But you can make this happen. So I don't know. Campbell is a great fit there, but so are a number of players that are a great fit there. I think they're probably going to take Campbell, but they're going to listen to offers.
All right, so I'm going to play GM. You know my love affair for Tyler Warren. I guess I'm going to play the easy way out here. Edge rusher. I'm going to take Jalen Walker here, and I know I have the 38th pick in the second round. I know I can use that as leverage and get back in around 24 to 26, and then I can get my left tackle with Joshua Simmons from Ohio State. That makes more sense to me, grabbing Jalen Walker at 5. I'm getting my edge guy from Georgia, and I'm going to come back in. As we said backstage, if Simmons didn't get hurt, he would have been the first tackle gone on this draft.
Yeah, Simmons is going to be interesting because whenever you have injury concerns, you have some people say, no, I'm not going to draft him, or I'm going to take him if he goes really late. And some people are looking at the player that they saw when he was on the field and say, I can wait a little bit. For example, if I'm a team like Baltimore, I say, well, I don't have to rush him in. If he falls to me, of course I'm going to take him because, I have a good offensive line. I'll wait a little bit. I think some of the teams that have these offensive lines in place, they're not going to be afraid to take him, maybe even in the top 15. So yes, that would be a strategy, but I wouldn't pin all my hopes on Josh Simmons because there's a good chance he won't be there 10 picks ahead of the spot, because you'd have to trade maybe a little too much to get past 25 or something.
Jacksonville at 5. I've been hearing Mason Graham a lot there. The turmoil at Jacksonville, new GM finally. I think for 3 years that you've been with me, you've said, when are they going to get rid of that guy? They've gotten rid of all his weapons. They got Brian Thomas now in a cloud of dust. Rumors, Ashton Genty, then they'll move Travis Etienne. Thoughts on Jacksonville?
Yeah, so this is the stage of the draft where if you're listening right now, you've got new GM there. You've got new GM, new coach, a third straight year of a new GM with Vegas. Who's next? The Jets, they've got a new coach, relatively new GM, and so on and so forth. Carolina's second-year kind of guys. New Orleans, a new coach. You've got some uncertainty here. So do we really know what Jacksonville's thinking? Not necessarily. I think at this point, you take whoever is highest on your board. If it's Genty, fine. If it's Graham, fine. If it's somewhere else, you've just got to build the roster and do not worry about, positions of need. Everything's need with Jacksonville right now. I think there's a lot of things on the table. Just have a master game plan. Kind of go through your draft scenarios and say, if we don't take edge rusher now, is there going to be somebody in the second round available at edge rusher? Maybe. Is there going to be somebody in the second round available at offensive line? Maybe. Running back, for sure, there's going to be some players. You've got to play and look at your board and see what's going to be available in round 2 and where the drop-off is. And you have to play that game.
At 6, the Raiders, Tom Brady, they bring in a quarterback from Seattle, of course, Geno. They got Brock Bowers. They need a running back. They've been tied to Genty. If Genty slides to 6, is that kind of where your head is, Ron?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm trying to look and see because, again, I think Genty is certainly the number 1 running back in this draft. And he's fast and he's done a lot of things, even though he didn't run a 40. My concern is, how good is he? Is he generational, or did he have a nice season because he played a lot of defenses that you wouldn't confuse with even mediocre in college football? I mean, there were some world-class defenses on the wrong side of things that allowed 6 yards per carry. And so Genty is going to run 7 or 8 yards per carry against teams like there was at one time in the season, he was averaging almost 10 yards a carry. And he also got used up a little at the end of the year, 30 carries, 130 yards and stuff like that. So while he's still a top 10 running back, I don't know if he's generational, and maybe Vegas does go in another direction. They need a lot of things. The problem is the wide receiver group is one of those groups where people have tremendously differing opinions on where people are. Is McMillan top 10 or is he 25? Is Golden? Where's Golden? Where's Ibuka? What about some of these other guys? You can get quality wide receivers in the second, third, fourth, and fifth rounds. So their positions of need are such that you can wait on. So maybe that brings me back to running back for them. I guess that's the prevailing opinion, but I wouldn't be shocked if they went in another direction.
The other name I heard earlier today, Membo. Does that make sense for them on the offensive line?
I think Tom Brady's influence would be one to say, yes, he may bang a little bit for the offensive line. They may bang a little bit at the defensive line, maybe get somebody to plug up the middle of that as well. There's just a lot of different options that they want to go. The GM's from Tampa Bay. He knows how they built that team. They built it with some edge rushers. They built it clogging up the middle with Villa in the middle of that. So I think they're going to shy away from wide receiver because of that. So I think it's going to be O-line, D-line, or Genti.
And at 7, I'm going to tell you right now, I have no temperature here. The latest couple mock drafts I saw, Russell Saylor's not going to like this. I saw Tyler Warren, and I'm saying to myself, who in the bleep is going to throw him the ball? I know you got Garrett Wilson. You got a decent running back stable with Braylon Allen, with Breece Hall. You got Garrett Wilson. You do need a tight end. I get that. Their defense is good. Would they shock me and draft Tyler Warren? Or if you were the GM, where are you looking, Ron?
Well, if this pick is not an offensive tackle or Tyler Warren, then I think they're missing the boat.
Okay.
Last year, they had extensive discussion on should they take an offensive lineman or should they take Brock Bowers. You and I probably talked on your show and others. I couldn't quite find a place for Brock Bowers, but I knew he was a top 10 talent. It's almost like that with Warren. His floor is 14 with Indianapolis, but his ceiling might be right here, 7 with the Jets. And I wouldn't be upset if they took him at 7. If you look at what Penn State did, they lined him up in numerous different plays. They lined him up to run the ball so there were a lot of things that they could do with the guy. I think offensive line is probably the best thing that they could do because that line really needs fixing. But if they go Warren, I'm not upset at all.
At 8, Carolina, this is the one if Jalen Walker slides to him, I've been told that they don't even need the 8 or 9 minutes. It's Jalen Walker here, Ron.
Yeah, it's like 6-1 that Jalen Walker's draft slot is under 8.5. Everybody pencils them in, so I guess let's pencil them in. They were transparent last year in a way. They did something that they didn't need to do. One of the no-nos in the draft is to go from the top pick in the second round into the first round. And one of the triple no-nos is to go from 33 to 32, because what are you doing with that pick? I mean, you're trading draft capital, which Carolina's famous for doing anyway. So they may even trade up to get Walker for all I know, but it looks like a done deal.
Now, a wild card here is the Saints at 9. As you said, new coach. Derek Carr's made it known he doesn't know if he'll be able to play this year, which if you read through the tea leaves, he wants out of New Orleans. Of course, Jameis is gone. I don't think Spencer Rattler is the answer. Maybe this is a good spot for Kirk Cousins. I don't know. Rumor had it weeks ago they could trade up to 4 and get Sanders. But at this point, if you want Sanders at 9, Sanders will be there. The later this goes, the more I'm hearing they're going to pass on Sanders. Then maybe they come back for a Jackson Dart. Maybe the kid from Louisville. We haven't even got to Jalen Milroe. If you're the GM here, do you take a bite at the apple with Sanders, or is there more needs that you see?
Yeah, my thought is, and I don't have a good catchphrase, aching for Arch. I don't know. I would tank this year and forget about quarterback and go up and get somebody, get a better quarterback next year, because this team all of a sudden has a lot of holes. If Will Johnson was fast, I think cornerback is the right play at 9, but we haven't really connected the dots there. And it just seems like Will Johnson has a lower ceiling. He looks like he's a fundamentally sound player. He didn't run. He had a lot of things, but I think even if he ran, you're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 tops. But that's the need for them, in my opinion, is cornerback. I think they like Genty. I think they would itch to move up a little bit for Genty, which hasn't been discussed quite as much. I think that if Mason Graham fell this far, they would be interested in that. They kind of get trigger fingers, so they may be doing a lot of different things. I don't think we can pigeonhole into one particular spot. I don't think they take a quarterback here. Do they trade up for a quarterback? Sure, that's in their DNA. They could trade up for a Dart, or they could trade up for Milroy. I mean, they could trade up for a number of different quarterbacks. I don't think quarterback is in their DNA at 9, but you never know. Quarterbacks are a funny breed.
So we get to the last pick in the 10. Funny, last year, the first 4 picks were quarterbacks, and then we get Penix and Bo Nix. So we had 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. Looks like it could be one and done so far for the top 10. Bears have been tied to Genty, as I said, the offensive line. Let's say Genty is gone. I'm a Omarion Hampton guy from UNC here. If you wanted Genty, is it that much of a drop off to take Hampton here, or if Genty's gone, you see another need here?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because before I get into what I think the Bears are in a sweet spot, they're in a good spot here at 10, actually. But before we get to that, I'm glad you brought up Hampton. Everybody has them going over 19.5, because at 20.5, when some of the books first priced it at 20.5, Denver came into play. But I'm not sure Denver wants Hampton. They want a running back. But if we were talking Denver, as I drift off the subject a little bit, I think Denver does draft a running back, but not necessarily at 20. But that's the sweet spot. Hampton is rumored to go in the first round, but maybe not early. But let me bring up this one example, and that's why I'm glad you brought this up. Gibbs, a couple of years ago, was certainly not rumored to go in the top 12 or 15. I thought because it's the Lions and they get impulsive, they were going to take him at 18. But then their whole world fell apart when Witherspoon was drafted at 5. And nobody saw that coming, and they couldn't have seen that coming. Seattle took him. So it threw their whole board off. We talk about how one player can throw off a whole board for mock drafters. It could throw off a board for a team as well. It just takes one team to fall in love with Hampton. And I think Hampton is this year's Gibbs. I think somewhere, somehow, he finds a spot in the top 18 or 19. That's just a gut feeling for me. And it's contrary to what's out there. Maybe I'm wrong, because there's so many great running backs, and maybe there weren't in the Gibbs year. But I think Hampton is top 20 worthy. He's not top 10 worthy. I think that is stretching it a little bit. And the Bears would be wise either to trade back. But the Bears have a lot of options here. If Genty doesn't fall to them, they could go Warren. If Warren doesn't, if they're not interested in Warren, there's an offensive. They can finish up the offensive line by taking Will Campbell if he drops, by taking Membu. They can figure out, they can take Josh Simmons. They could do a few things to finally shore up their offensive line. There's really a number of ways Chicago could work this draft, and I think they're going to come out with a good player.
Well, and even Kelvin Banks will be there as well from Texas, so there's another that they could do there. It's funny, there was a tweet out earlier this week, and it was from one of the fantasy football companies, I think PFF it was, and they put the top 15 fantasy running backs for this upcoming year. And they had Denver Broncos with Trayvon Henderson. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you have, a crystal ball here? So that had the gerbil going. Genty gone, Hampton gone. There's the Broncos, and there goes Henderson. Is Henderson first round worthy?
It's going to be interesting because I think because of this, he had a little bit of an uneven senior season with, I know they use Junkins for the heavy duty work, but I thought we'd see Henderson because he averages what 5-6 yards a carry. I thought we'd see more of him in college. So in some ways he's lightly used, but in some ways he's not your feature back. He's kind of the back that you're going to use 7 to 10 times a game as opposed to 15. Is that worthy of the 20th pick in the draft? You know, a Shanahan team and a Sean Payton team, they know how to handle running backs. So if they pick a Henderson, then I have a higher grade on him. Maybe Kansas City's interested in him in the back of the first round. They can have Pacheco as the guy who runs angry, and then Henderson as the guy who breaks the big run. So I think Henderson is probably 50-50 for me to go in the first round. And I think with the right team, he's going to be an asset, but he's not an every down player. At least he hasn't proven to be at this point in his career.
All right, I'm going to make it a little easier on you here. 11 to 15, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, Indy, and Atlanta at 15. Any thoughts on those guys?
Okay, so for San Francisco, they like to build from the inside on out. So Banks is a definite match to me there. Edge rusher is a match. A couple of the DTs are a match. I think they need cornerback, but I think the value, you're going to get a really good either offensive tackle or defensive lineman. I think that's what we're looking at San Francisco. Dallas is looking at wide receiver. I understand that. They may be a trade down possibility. We've seen Jerry, he's passive anyway. We've seen him trade down. If somebody goes up and says, hey, wait a second, somebody's dropping, I could see Dallas as a spot where they could go back to like Atlanta. They're trigger happy, 15 to 12 for Dallas. We could see, maybe a Denver move up, but that's a big jump, 20 to 12. So Dallas in that area. Miami's sneaky. I think they'd like to have a safety, but 13 is a little too rich for Starks or the gentleman from, I think it's South Carolina, that I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Those two are very evenly matched. It just depends on your scheme. So I think Miami could probably go O-line or edge rusher because they had some injuries there, but safety is the real need. Indianapolis, that's the floor for Warren, but I think Indianapolis is going to go offensive line ahead of Loveland. I just have a feeling that offensive line would be more valuable rather than the second tight end of the board. And Atlanta, you know how I feel about Atlanta, edge rusher or die, and then I put second choice. What did I write? When is the annual burial? That's what I wrote. I mean, I don't trust Atlanta to do anything, but maybe this is the year they go get an edge rusher. Mike Green, they didn't meet with Mike Green. He's probably their kind of guy because there are some off-field concerns. He's very prolific. And I think he's going to make a very good pro, but Atlanta didn't meet with him. So it'll be interesting to see where Mike Green goes. He may go to Cincinnati, for example, at 17.
I'm going to go back to Dallas for a second because they've been tied to a wide receiver. On your board, do you have Golden over Tet McMillan, or would you, if Dallas was going to take that wide receiver, is Tet the guy to take?
This is where person team fit matters because I have McMillan ahead of Golden probably 2/3 of the time. Dallas, I would have Golden probably ahead of McMillan for Dallas. And I wouldn't sweep on Ibuka either. I'm higher on him than most. I think he's a first-round talent. I know he's dropping his numbers, 29.5. People don't see him in the first round. They're betting under 2.5 receivers. Luther Burden has dropped a little bit, so I don't think he's in the first-round conversation. I think Ibuka is a fine player as well. I actually have Ibuka, depending on where he goes, as much as number 2 wide receiver.
Well, now 16 to 20, Arizona, Cincinnati, Seattle, Tampa, and Denver. Now, the fun begins here because I told you last year, and I think they fell asleep at the wheel. Cincinnati was primed for Bowers. And can you imagine Chase, T. Higgins, and Bowers? And then that's when the Raiders shocked the world, and they drafted Mayer the year before. They take Bowers. So I'm looking here at Cincinnati at 17. I'm assuming Warren's gone, but Loveland's still on the board. And now Denver, and we'll get to the Chargers, are salivating right now because we said Denver running back. We talked about Henderson. They're in play for a tight end. I told you backstage, Harbaugh in no way in hell is letting Loveland go if he can get his hands on him. To Cincinnati finally say, hey, guys, we blew it with Bowers here. We're taking Loveland here.
Yeah, so for Cincinnati, I think they have to fix the defense. They got to trust Joe Burrow to do Joe Burrow things. What he accomplished with that team, the way that defense played, was absolutely amazing. They're being held, I don't know if they're being held hostage or they're holding Trey Hendrickson hostage, but we don't know what's going on there. If it was a different organization that was more trigger happy, I would think Henderson would be part of a draft day deal. And then they would come back with an edge rusher at this particular point. So only they know what the end result is going to be with Hendrickson. There's been some back and forth words, but I think depending on how they look, this is more edge rusher and more defense than it is offense.
20 Tampa is at 19, Seattle at 18. Seattle obviously moves the quarterback. Geno, they did very well in the draft last year. They got a good stable of backs with Kenneth Walker. Lockett has left the building. DK Metcalf has left the building. This leaves Njigba solo looking around like, who's with me here? What does Seattle do here?
Yeah, they may have an interest in McMillan or Golden more than Ibuka if that person drops. This is a weird time, especially the last 24 hours news, because Seattle and Tampa, to me, were teams that fit linebacker Campbell, Jaheed Campbell of Iowa, I believe it is. Now, he just had surgery. Today, I think it was announced or that he's going to. So that throws a monkey wrench in everything. It was a succession plan for Tampa to be able to draft Campbell. I have his range at around 18 to 27, 19 to 27. This was a spot for a fundamentally sound player again for Campbell, but he's going to drop now. So I think he's out of the Seattle sweepstakes. So they're back into, do they take Booker, an offensive guard? Do they trade back and take Booker, an offensive guard? Did they convert a tackle to guard at Seattle? Or do they go wide receiver with if Golden or McMillan drops? And Golden may very well be around at 18. So that's kind of my thinking for Seattle.
We talked Denver at 20, Pittsburgh at 21, and the Chargers at 22. These are three amazing spots. We put Denver with a running back or a tight end. I already talked about the Chargers and my thought process with Harbaugh and Loveland. And then here's Pittsburgh, who was sitting around the same spot. And Kenny Pickett, the hometown hero, fell to them. And they're like, all right, we'll take him. Sanders falls to him. Do they say, all right, we'll take it? So Denver, Pittsburgh, and Chargers. I can't wait to hear what you think there.
We all like to talk in revisionist history, and everybody now says, oh, Pittsburgh was stupid for taking Pickens. At the time they took him, everybody applauded them. They did their work on 8 quarterbacks or whatever. You can't go back and say, oh, I told you so. I told you so if you didn't tell you so at that particular time. I think Sanders would be the choice here. And situation change year by year, but quarterbacks are just, unfortunately, with the rules favoring offenses so much, you have to take a stab at a quarterback. It doesn't cost that much, especially doesn't cost that much at pick 21 to take a quarterback. A lot of teams are starting to like Dart a little bit more than Sanders, but I think Sanders is a better fit for what Pittsburgh has. They have these wide receivers who are contested catch specialists. They get down the field. Metcalf drives opposing DBs crazy. Pickens does the same thing. I don't know if they're kind of both the same style in a way. It's weird how they're going to coexist, but I think Sanders throws a decent enough deep ball. I've seen it. I think he could do that. And I think the offensive line, Pittsburgh drafted 3 offensive linemen last year, preparing for their quarterback of the future. Pittsburgh's always in quarterback limbo because they're never drafting in the top 10. So they can't get that elite quarterback. But at 21, they're kind of stuck with, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try the veteran route. We tried Russell Wilson. We tried Justin Fields. We may try Aaron Rodgers. That's all you could do when you're drafting in the 15 to 20. So if Sanders is available, I think you give it a try.
Do they pull the Band-Aid? I mean, they got Mason Rudolph and they got someone else there. I mean, if they draft Sanders, can they put the flag down and say, hey, Aaron, we've played long enough here. We're moving in a different direction, or they draft Sanders, they still want Rodgers for that 1 year?
Rodgers says he's willing to pay for $10 million. I guess it's not a terrible monetary investment, but I don't know. Rodgers, it's either boom or bust. Plus 275 last year for the Jets to win that division. It got bet down afterwards. It seemed like a good value at plus 275. But with Rodgers and his body language, you just don't know. Rodgers can take you to the playoffs. At his age, he could still take you to the playoffs behind this offensive line that's getting better. He could do that. I think Pittsburgh's going to draft a running back to team with Warren. They've got their tight end. I guess you roll the dice with Rodgers, but if you don't, I'm okay with it, with not having that drama as well.
Yeah, I am so tired of the drama there. 23, Green Bay, Minnesota, Houston, Rams, and the Ravens. Any thoughts on any of those teams?
Yeah, a few thoughts here. Green Bay, you roll with the steam. Is it Amos? Is it Hairston? Is it Barron? Some cornerback, I think, is going to end up in Green Bay. That's my initial thought right now. If it doesn't work out that way, that there's no steam there, they could go back and look at offensive line. Some people say they may take a wide receiver, but I don't know if the value is there, although Ibuka would be an excellent fit there. But I think you roll with a hot hand at cornerback. That's my feeling with Green Bay. Minnesota's probably going to trade out of the pick. They only have 4 picks, 3 plus a compensatory, and 2 of them are very, very late in this draft. I don't see them sitting at 24. I see them trading back, and I see them getting a safety or a cornerback in this spot. I think if Starks or the other guy, probably both will be available, especially if both are available, they're going to trade back a little bit. That's what I would do as GM. Don't have a real handle on Houston right now. They lost a bunch of offensive linemen, Tunsil and so on. So I think offensive line would be the method to go. The Rams are kind of a wild card there too. What they're going to do. They may trade back. We'll see what happens there. Baltimore is going to be best available player. They're just going to take whoever drops to them. Is it Starks at safety? Is it a edge rusher that drops to them? Is it an offensive lineman that drops to them? Whoever you think has slid down the board, it stops at Baltimore.
I love that thought part. So I'll ask you, because I don't have the Jimmy Johnson chart in front of me here. The pick 38 for New England. And those teams that you said that were going to trade out, Minnesota, maybe the Rams. We don't know what Houston's doing. And Simmons is still available. Is it too crazy if they drafted Campbell, who they said you could play at left tackle for the first year, but he could end up moving over? Is it too crazy if the Pats move back in and say, hey, we got Campbell, now we got Simmons, we got our bookends here for the future?
That's not what I want to see. Because I want to see 4 different positions, 4 different starters. So if they don't go offensive line with that pick 4, they'll probably have to trade back, but probably you're not going to be able to trade 12 down. And I think the touching point might be Buffalo. For whatever reason, Buffalo's been passive in the draft. I'd rather see a team that's so close to the Super Bowl make 2 bold moves. Buffalo is roughly around 10 picks. 10 players from this draft will not make Buffalo's roster. It's too good for that. Why not be bold and move up? But instead, Buffalo likes to trade back. So if I'm New England and I need an offensive lineman, I start looking at pick 30.
28 to the bottom. The Lions, Washington, Buffalo, Kansas City, and the Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, so this is where it gets crazy because it's all dependent on what's happened in front of them. Although Detroit is trigger happy, they went 4 trades up, no trades back last year, 3 trades up the year before. When they fall in love with a person, they really fall in love with a person. So they could be looking at the Boston College edge rusher, for example. This is roughly around the time period. What did they do? They had something like 18 sacks in their last 11 games after Hutchinson got hurt. They can't afford to have limited pressure on opposing quarterback because, sorry about this.
That's okay.
It makes their defensive backs cover for too long, and it creates penalties or broken plays. They need a stronger pass rush. So I think they're looking edge rusher. That would be my look there. Washington, I'm not so sure where they're looking, to be honest. But I do think they're going to get a high-quality person. They love the culture kind of fit. I don't really have any match for them right now. Buffalo, I would just look defense. Their pass defense was 68, 69%. Let's solve that problem. Let's get a defensive back. Kansas City, probably offensive line or edge rusher. And Philadelphia will trade the pick somewhere, up, back, around, through. We don't know. They'll either replenish on the defensive line or they may be sneaky and they go after a tight end by trading back and going after a tight end, or maybe they get an offensive line for succession planning. They're probably going to be looking one way, shape, or form for line play.
6 quarterbacks in the first round last year. Under overs 2.5. Obviously, Cam Ward. We're assuming Sanders. I'm looking at the bottom of this draft, and unless someone early in the second one to jump back in, Dart, the kid from Louisville, and then I think the second day specialist wildcard Jalen Milroe. So are you saying under 2.5 for the first round?
Well, I pride myself on being really, really good at these markets, the over-unders as far as positions, and my track record attests to that. But quarterback is a wild card. I can't get in the GM heads for quarterback. If it were me, 2 quarterbacks would go in the first round only. Sanders and obviously Ward. Milroe will probably not quite make the second round. I mean, not quite make the first round, but he'll be a target in the second round. I have a 3rd round grade on him for what it's worth. Dart separated himself from me in the combine. I thought he did a fine job. To me, before the combine, he was lumped with about 5 guys. I wanted to see what Quinn Ewers would do. I wanted to see what Milroe, would do in his pro day and stuff like that. Dart's the 3rd best quarterback, but I have a 2nd round grade on him. Does somebody go up and get him? I would say 55-45, yes. So I'd probably say prevailing opinion is we might see 3 in the first round, but that's not what I would do.
Tight end, running back, deep class. We've talked a lot about, of course, Tyler Warren, Loveland. We talked a lot about Genty, Omarion Hampton, Henderson, but there's a lot more running backs as well. Second and 3rd round, we're going to see a lot of these guys fly.
Absolutely. Mason Taylor at tight end is a guy to watch even at the back end of the first round. He could be kind of your 30 to 37. Obviously, his dad, a star player in the NFL. And he's young. He's just finding his footing. He's not one of these overage prospects and stuff like that. So you could actually go in and develop this guy. And there's a lot of good. Fannon's going to be in the 3rd round, most likely. All he did was set records at Bowling Green. He reminds me of the amount of production he has, not necessarily the body type. Reminds me of McBride of Arizona. And so who wouldn't draft McBride in day 2 nowadays? I mean, he's just done so well. And I think Fannin could have an underrated career. And at running back, the big thing, and this is kind of what I said at the beginning, is I've not seen a draft where we have respected sources have a particular running back be the 66th best pick in the big draft, and another respected source says he's the 200th best pick in the draft. I mean, there are such wide deviations on some of these backs. It's incredible. Trevor Etienne is like 3rd round to 6th round. You've got all these different things. So if you want one of those one cut runners, if you want a bruising running back, if you want a committee running back, your boards are going to be different. But there are certainly about 6, 7, 8 day 2 running backs that can make a difference in the NFL and can make you a playoff team.
The one back that had an amazing run during the playoffs that is now, his name is kind of slid down because it's so deep. Where do you have a grade for the kid from Arizona State, Scottie?
I hope it's in the top 130.
Okay.
I hope it's in the top 120. I think his floor, he's going to have to get with the right team. He's not fast. That's a problem. He's a try-hard running back who, if you meet him at the line of scrimmage, you're not pushing him back. He's going to push you forward. So that's a good thing. He may be a good goal line back. He's a good safety valve in terms of outlet. I think his ceiling in this draft is compensatory 3rd round range, so 97 to 102. And his floor should be, I guess his floor, because there's a lot of running backs and there's a lot of defense, his floor could be 120. I see him as a top 120. Maybe it falls back to 125. I got burned once. I said this guy, where I can't remember the name, thank goodness, but I said, oh no, he's not going in the top 3. And then the last pick of the 3rd round, the compensatory, they took him or whatever. So maybe in this case, it flips the other way. Scottie gets picked, roughly right around pick 100, 102.
Kind of reminds me back in our day of a Mike Allstott. How's that?
Yeah, Allstott was a devastating blocker, and so it'll be interesting to see whether Scottie can further develop his blocking skills, because every time they snapped the ball, he wasn't really blocking for anybody. He was carrying the ball. So he's going to have that blocking. He has the skill set and he has the demeanor to be that good blocker, but it'll have to be developed a little bit, as opposed to Allstott, who seemingly had it from birth.
One of my last questions, a name or two that no one's heard of that might be quietly moving up the charts, and then of course a name or two that everyone's heard that Mel Kiper will be saying every other player, well, this is the best guy on the board. How is he still here?
Yeah. I'm going to try to look through some of my sheets or whatever. I'm not going to give you the deep guys who aren't going to be drafted, but I think are going to be good. Kyle Williams is getting a lot of push, the Washington State receiver, and he fits a lot of different things. I have him pre-draft right around the 10th best wide receiver, so that may be higher than a lot of people think. Everybody likes Jack Beck. He has a sad and wonderful story, in terms of his commitment and drive and whatever. I don't have him rated as highly as others. I think he's a complimentary wide receiver, so I would be a little bit lower on him. Trying to see if there are some others that have moved up there. We mentioned some cornerbacks. I'll give you a name, Xavier Watts. I'm higher on Xavier Watts. I think he should be a 2nd round pick, as opposed to what I'm hearing is in the 60s, kind of an early 3rd rounder. Xavier Watts just makes plays, and I think he's a safety that should go in the 2nd round. And these cornerbacks are going to be interesting. Where does Hairston fall? Where does Amos fall? And I'll give you one other name, Siobhan Revelle, who has 1st-round talent, but he had so many starts and stops in his life. Serious car crash in high school, I think it was, and almost cost him his life. setbacks with knee injuries in both the end of high school and twice, I think, in college. He's not 100% healthy now. Whoever drafts him is going to get a guy who's going to be better on his second contract than his first contract, because he's not going to have that anticipation skills. If you throw him out now, any quarterback worth their salt is going to bait him out of position. But Siobhan Ravel is probably going to be drafted in the second round, and you have to be cautious with him. He's a tremendous talent, but I think if you throw him out too fast, he's going to get burned.
You know, it's comical, Ron, because in the year 2020, when COVID struck the world, we were grasping for content. And we had some golf, we had some NASCAR, of course, we had some ping pong. But my point is, the draft became the draft, and that's when the books grabbed the bull by the horns and say, "Hey, we'll give these guys some action." Now we're in 2025. You and I, without even breaking a sweat, have just talked for an hour, and we just basically breezed through the first round. You threw out some names for guys to keep an eye on. It's just amazing where we've come in 5 years, Ron.
And it's funny because there were certain books, even in, I want to say, 10, 12 years ago, that had live draft odds before they were in vogue, where you could bet who was going to go with the 16th pick before the end of the 14th pick was done, and so on and so forth. There were really novel things, but a lot of these companies got burned with that, especially from people who do things like I do, where we don't do it for just betting purposes, but we do it because we study the draft for other reasons. I'm going to produce 40 draft reports and stuff like that. So I knew these players. Sports books don't know these players. So like you said, a lot of offerings in 2020, 21, and whatever. And now you see Circa and all these other places, notable online books that are releasing props now, not a month ago. And they're releasing a limited number. Even Circa had 70 props last year, 21 this year. They're going to offer it for a 6-day period. It's going away tomorrow. Vegas, by rule, all their props go away tomorrow. Nobody wants to offer them now. Now that there's a market and a thirst for them, the recreational player isn't betting them. The ones who are playing them are the ones who have done this for quite a bit of time, and so they have an edge up. So we love to talk draft, but in terms of the draft betting world, there are fewer options now.
And I find it so comical because there'll be people flying into Vegas Thursday to go to the Circa, to go to the Westgate, and some of these other places to watch the draft and bet, and they didn't read the fine print, because I think when the clock strikes midnight Wednesday, they're gone.
5 o'clock Wednesday, 24 hours beforehand. It's going to be over, 25 hours from now or something like that. Yeah, as soon as it's 24 hours before the draft. That's the rule.
Well, this might be the last 7-yard button hook, and Ron's closing thoughts of the year again. You got your stage for next year. We welcome you with open arms, but give us your closing thoughts today, sir.
Okay, from a wagering standpoint, which I'm glad we didn't cover too much of that, because that shouldn't be the focus on this. 2 thoughts, though. One is be careful how you wager, because before you know it, the numbers add up and you're top heavy on something. And like you said, and like I said, one strange move, Atlanta takes Penix at 8 and it throws the whole thing down. 1 or 2 strange moves, and because there are different grades on different people, from 15 on, you may see craziness. So be careful with that. And remember this, when you look and you analyze the draft out, a lot of people are going to go away and say, oh, the draft's over, round 1's over. Maybe I'll watch a little bit of round 2. But what happens is I'm not done. I'm not done in the least part. I've got 80% of it done and stuff like that. But if there are holes with these teams and there are obvious gaps, it's going to affect their season performance next year. If they all of a sudden hit a home run like Seattle did 3 years ago out of the blue with Witherspoon, and every single pick hit, I think you grade them higher, and I think you take that into account. If New England gets 4 instant starters, like I think they can, you take that into account. So I would advise people who want to be serious about how did your team do in the draft is study it after all 3 days, because I think we're going to get a really good picture. It's cloudy right now what's going to happen. I think we're going to get a better picture after day 3.
Well, we can't thank you enough. Another season in the books. Obviously, after the draft, at any point, OTAs, grading the draft, whatever, I know you're going on vacation, so I don't want to mess with the vacation. But anytime, feel free to give us a holler on.
Thanks. And I do want to a shameless plug. Tomorrow I will do, because I've done, and you were on, thank you very much for one of the Wednesday weekly podcasts just to keep me going. Those are going to stop in a few weeks so that I can get out of town. But tomorrow is going to be draft centric, and we have Matthew Friedman on, and he's been top 2, top 6 in terms of his mock drafts. So you'll want to tune in to see what Matthew is honing in on, because he really studies it, and I hope to get into his kind of pathway as how to study it. I actually took one of his methods and applied it for the first time this year. So I'm not too old to learn something new there. So Matthew will be on, and then Kiev from the Odds Breakers will be on. He has a lot of great takes, and he studies this thing like us. We study it 12 months a year. Even if we're not talking about it, it's in the back of our minds. Kiev and Matthew and I will be talking round 1 mostly about the draft tomorrow. So stay tuned for that tomorrow morning.
Well, everyone, if you're not following by now, shame on you, as the dogs are barking loud here. Maybe that means there's some upset picks coming on Thursday. Go follow Ron, of course, at Ron A Sports. Come check myself out at EC Sports Invest. Thank you all. We had standing room only here at Twitter. Always a pleasure, guys. Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. Brady Cannon will be back. He'll be talking some golf, and we look forward to everyone here, hopefully rejoining us. Stay tuned.